This week on Wednesday Wisdom, we're going to use these two credit cards to teach us a little bit about gratefulness and forgiveness. You see here as we get in the middle of chapter 7 in Luke, verses round about the 40s, we're in the middle of this account where Jesus has forgiven this sinful woman of her sins. And this Pharisee, again, finds problem with it and tries calling him out on this. So afterwards, he's explaining to Simon what all this means. And he starts framing it in the amount of debt one person has versus another. And I think, again, this is where we can use these credit cards because we today are so comfortable with debt that we often don't even think about how much money any single one of us owes a bank or some other individual every single day because we're comfortable in it. Just like we're comfortable in the fact that we sin all the time. Sometimes it affects us, but usually we don't think about it. We just go on. And that's kind of why I want to talk about this in the frames of credit, because we have these cards like this, our Visa or whatever, that is, we're putting stuff on constantly that drags us deeper and deeper into debt. Just like any sin we do takes us away from God. I wouldn't say further and further the more we sin, because any sin separates us from God. But it's just like putting it on account. We know all these things that we have done, and we're just building up this tremendous debt that we cannot pay, this sin debt, right? And how many people in their life, I know I have it a number of times, gotten so deep in credit card debt or other debt that it feels like I'm never going to pay it off. There's nothing I'm going to be able to do. You might even say today, one of the hot button topics, right, is student loan forgiveness. How many of our young people are so buried in debt that they feel they don't have a future? If you've ever been there, you know that feeling is just empty and terrible and hopeless. And that is the feeling that Jesus is saying about, man, if you're so deep in this debt of sin, how grateful are you going to be when somebody comes along and says, hey, I'm paying that debt for you, just like Jesus did with our sin, right? But it'd be the same, on the Oprah show. Hey, I'm going to pay off your credit cards or whatever. How thankful are you if all your cards are maxed out and you can't make the payments? You're going to be super thankful. But on the other hand, if you don't have a high balance or you think you're doing pretty good, which is kind of why I got the American Express card here, right? Because American Express card, we can't carry a balance. It has to be paid off every month. So you might say, this is the Pharisee here thinking he doesn't have a big debt. But you know what? He does. He's still spending or sinning, as the case may be. Yes, I thought of the American Express card, right? Don't leave home without it, because you're always sinning and you're always building up, call it a sin debt. And none of us can pay that. I don't care who you are or how good you think you're doing. And that's what Jesus is saying, is who's going to be more faithful, thankful? The one who really realizes how buried they are in that debt of sin? Or the one that thinks, hey, I'm doing pretty good. I don't sin that much. I don't do that much. And I pay it off every month. It's not a big deal because I do these good things. Well, you know what? That doesn't pay off your sin debt. The only thing that does is Jesus. He's the only one that can make that right. And that's why it's so important that we realize that and just give him what the only thing he wants in exchange for paying that debt is our hearts, our trust, our love. I just thought, framing that up in something we're all familiar with, debt, financial debt versus sin debt. I thought that might be a good visual for us here as we're in the middle of Luke working through this, and how often we take it for granted that Jesus did pay that debt for each and every one of us, a debt that we can't pay. So this week, I just want you to focus on that, the gratefulness of the fact that Jesus did what we couldn't do, and he asked for nothing in return other than our loyalty, our faith, and our hope and trust in him. So we'll catch you next week. on Wednesday Wisdom.